A lot of children are being diagnosed as ADHD and other learning disabilities these days. In your
Mhm.
opinion, do you feel that more kids actually have ADHD and so forth? Or do you feel that perhaps everything is being diagnosed as ADHD or other kinds of learning challenges when in fact it might just be the approach to teaching?
I think that it's a mixture of both. I think as more people come to understand these things, the more we are realizing that because in some respects these labels aren't just necessarily saying that the child is saying, look, this child is dyslexic, so they need to learn like this. This child is ADHD or something, so they need to learn like that. It's in some respects acknowledging that there's more than one way to learn. We're not all just one generic kind of like clone of each other and that we're all going to learn the same way. So in some respects, the label is pretty much just saying, look, this child will struggle if you present it like that. But if you present it
Mm.
like this, then you're going to give them access to being able to actually cope with what it is that you're asking. And I also think it's like I said, kind of nearly 20 years ago, I went into Clara's school and said, I think she might be dyslexic. And they said, well, dyslexia is an excuse for laziness, toddle off and don't kind of like darken my doorway again, sort of thing. Whereas these days, if I was to probably go into the same school and say, look, this is my thoughts, they'd probably go, okay, well, let us have a look, see what we think. So I think part of it is the fact that teachers and professionals are more aware, and
Mm.
so therefore more people are being labelled. I think part of it is sometimes self-diagnosis by parents because that way it gives an excuse for their child to be struggling, or
Mm.
it's like in the past that always he's one of the youngest in the year, he's a boy, he's
Mm.
this, he's that. An excuse was made, whereas these days, and I also think a part of it as well is the fact that if my child is struggling, at the minute, as it stands, they're just in a class of 30. They're either seen as disruptive or they're seen as quiet.
Mm.
One way or another, they're not getting the support that they need. If they are given a label, it means that when it comes to the exam, they'll be given extra time, or it means they'll be
Mm.
given someone that can read them the questions, or someone that can write the answers for them, or they can write with a laptop or something. Because I was reading something recently, and it was something I never realized that ADHD isn't always the child who's kind of swinging from the chandeliers, running around and being disruptive. Very often it's the child who hyper focuses. So they don't know when to turn off. They just kind of like,
Mm.
you give them something that interests them, and kind of 24 hours later, they're still sat there with their head down working on it because no, their
Mm.
brain just doesn't say to them, Jane, stop now. You've had enough. And it's often because it's a spectrum. It can be that very, very quiet child who focuses, or it could be that very energetic child who just can't focus. And so, because it is such a broad thing, we've probably all got different labels at different places. It's just if you're more central to the kind of like, it doesn't get, you don't need to know about it. But if you deviate from it, then it's kind of like more noticeable. And I think as well, when you have however many children in a class and everyone's just got to sit down quietly with a worksheet and children didn't have the confidence to ask or whatever, it was probably far harder to acknowledge. If I know that if I can like talk to my friend, I'm going to get hit with a cane or a ruler or something, or if I do this, I'm going to be, I don't know, the punishments were much greater. Whereas these days, when teaching styles have changed slightly and children don't have the same fear, there's more stimulation around because
Mm.
it's no longer just a blank classroom or we're all sat at individual desks or whatever. It's harder. I've now got fluorescent lights, and the fluorescent lights can like affect me with my autism, or if you see what if I was autistic.
Right.
So there's more stimuli, which is kind of like creating more issues for these children who don't necessarily learn in kind of like the mainstream method. So do I think more children have been diagnosed? Yes, I think they probably are. But is it just because it's an excuse? No, not always. I think it is just the fact that as there's more stimuli in the environment and things are learning, children, that the people are learning more about these different things. I think there is a need for it. But I think unless we actually change how we teach these or support these children in the classroom, you can give them all the labels under the sun, but you're not actually going to make life any better for them in the actual classroom scenario.